And she said, yeah, I think you might have saved your son by holding some of his shots since you were questioning this. And then I spoke with Dr. Tim Bowie, who's a gastroenterologist from Harvard, and he told me about this new sort of emerging entity of autism enterocolitis, and there's these little patches of inflammation in kids, and maybe that is something that's that inflammation is affecting the brain as well in terms of development. And he gave me some tips for trying to cool that inflammatory process down that might be in his gut. He didn't think he was bad enough to scope him, but some kids were getting scoped by him at his institution. And then I spoke with, lastly, I heard from Dr. Martha Herbert, who is a pediatric neurologist from Harvard as well, and she's a sort of a broad thinker about this autism epidemic, which obviously there might be some controversy about epidemic, but we know that there's no genetic epidemic. There has to be some sort of genetic predisposition for this entity that somehow gets triggered by some environmental thing, almost as if there's the genetics is the gun and there's some environmental trigger. And that's what's starting to make sense to me, because so many of these kids, mine included, has all these medical sort of comorbidities. So she describes autism as more of a the brain as a downstream organ in this illness, and there's all of these other perhaps sources of inflammation that are activating some of the brain, inflammatory cells. So that's just an introduction to this new paradigm, I think, that's probably emerging. It's going to take about 5 to 10 years for this to fall into the mainstream medicine, but I thought these people were awfully clever in the way they're trying to look at this in a different way and actually trying things instead of waiting for some double-blinded study, which will never happen, or some genetic, federally funded genetic study to find a gene. They're just trying things to try and treat these kids. So me being a physician, I just sort of took over my son's care and thought, well, we'll try some of these things and see how it falls out. And my wife is awfully smart too. She's probably the smarter one, actually. She's the researcher. She's the master's in exercise physiology. So we kind of went about it in a very methodical way, and we didn't tell any of our early start people. We didn't tell our occupational therapists who came over. We didn't tell some of the aides who came over. We just let what simple changes we made fall out of any reporting that was done, which they do great reporting for your kids at the Tri-Counties level, and it's essential to see how your child's doing. So what was amazing is that some of these people who had been taking care of kids for 15, 20, 25 years hadn't ever had a NOAA recover and respond so quickly to some of these things. And they were pretty simple. And like I said, I'm kind of a strict thinker, and I tried to separate my emotions of what I wanted to see in my son from what I was really seeing and what other people were seeing, but I think some of the reports were sort of bearing that out. So that's where we were. We came to this conclusion that there was a treatableness about this autism, and yeah.
Well, let me just ask you something maybe a little different. With your family, I stay around Ventura as well, and I would see that you and your wife would finally get a couple minutes together down at Meridian's there, and I'd really try and leave you alone because it's very obvious that you weren't getting much time by yourselves, that you were really spending a lot of time, a lot of floor time with them, a lot of times, a lot of the things that the Tri-Counties Regional Center people had taught you. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the physical things, the teachability, and really trying to get that downstream organ retrained back on path?
I think that what we did sort of for Noah's health lifted a fog on his brain for some of the things that we were doing, and every child is really different, and our child really needed some relationship and connection, and so you sort of drop everything if it's your son or daughter, and you just try to go bring him back, and that's what we did. We went with more of a relationship development intervention. That's one service that you can contract with through the Tri-Counties to try and get in your child's face. It's a variation of floor time, which is following your child around versus you becoming a master and they becoming an apprentice. And everything is face-based, and it's all this communication without words. And we didn't know if we were going to get Noah to talk anyway. And the person who was actually seeing him said, I'm not sure we'll teach Noah to talk. And basically he got all of his language back and more. If you meet him, he'll talk your ear off.
We take care of a lot of children with special health care needs through the Pediatric Diagnostic Center, and people will look at some of our kids with cerebral palsy or at home on ventilators and go, oh my gosh, how can you do that as a family? But oftentimes it'll bring your family closer together, and instead of watching TV all the time, a mealtime is a family event, and there are more things that you're doing in the backyard together, you're in the living room together, you're reading books, you're doing more things as a family.
We are, and not that that wasn't part of our model when we started having a family in the first place, but we didn't really count on this. It wasn't part of our plan, if you ever get to have a plan in life. But I would have to say it's made us extremely stronger and extremely more aware of the world, much more compassionate to moms who have tough kids in the grocery store, etc. And really much more aware of our health. I mean, our general health is just better based on the dietary changes. My son goes to preschool with broccoli and apples and some nitrate-free hot dogs. Everybody else has Cheez Whiz.
Well, it's going to be a great thing to have you as a resource in our community. I really thank both Tori Bogosian and Rick Sletton for bringing their experiences both as professionals and parents here. We really hope that through our improved developmental screening, teaching the pediatricians and the community that we really want to look for early services, early intervention. Thank you, Tri-Counties Regional Center. Thank you, Ventura Unified School District, for all that you've brought. And Ventura, it's just time for us to get moving.